Next on is Graham Stuart MP, a Conservative in Beverley and Holderness, very rural. I worked in Beverley, a former Energy Security and Net Zero Secretary in Sunak's cabinet, lucky man. But he was out on the streets today with farmers. Gray, good afternoon. How are you, my friend?
I'm great, thank you, Jeremy. And yeah, it was a lot of energy, a remarkable demo because everyone's so polite. But actually underneath that, so angry because so many young people there, and that's what farming is all about. It's all about the generations. Why do people who have assets, which are often worth millions of pounds, work so hard for so little return and investing all the time in that business? They do it for the next generation because they've done it. It's a lifestyle focused thing, which produces, as you just said, the food that we eat. So of all the people in society, you've got people, yeah, millions of pounds of assets, but they're not, unlike so many others, they're not making off like bandits. In fact, on the contrary, they're getting up at 4 a.m. to look after their cows. They're producing the food for us to eat, and they get very little return on the capital they've got. And they do it because it's what they love doing. They know it's part of helping the country. And yet here we are, Keir Starmer thinks of all the people to go and attack, he's going to attack them.
Well, actually, I'm so glad you brought that up, and I've done this, so I'll probably get told off. We're showing pictures at the moment of our Prime Minister, who's currently in Brazil. What's he talking about? The Amazon... I don't want to dip in. I've got no desire, and I'll tell you exactly why. I've got no desire to hear what Keir Starmer's saying in Brazil about rainforests or net zero crap. He should be in the United Kingdom talking to the farmers who are protesting and who are being screwed by his government. He should be in the United Kingdom talking to pensioners, or he should be talking to veterans. I haven't seen him because he spent about 80% of his time flying all over the world trying to change things. But I would suggest Graham Stuart MP for Beverley and Holderness, he should be back here, shouldn't he?
I think he absolutely should. And he's flown there on a private jet, which, you know, personally, I think Prime Ministers should be able to go in a private jet. We're a major economy, and that's fair enough. But what did he do in opposition? He railed against the use of the private jet by Rishi Sunak. He's a hypocrite. And I think that's what gets people. He spoke a couple of years ago to the farmers, and he said he really got it. He said he understood the challenges facing family farming. He said that they were going to be safe under Labour. And I hate using the L word because it kind of demeans politics, but basically he lied, didn't he? He said in the election he wasn't going to put taxes up. He lied. He said he wasn't going to do anything to pensioners' benefits. He lied. And on so many fronts, he's just hurting people in my constituency who believed in him. People were, you know, disappointed after the pandemic, with inflation, high energy costs. They were hoping for a change, and they were promised no more taxes. We'll look after you know, farmers, we're going to look after the elderly, and we're going to put economic growth at the centre of our, you know, our challenge of our mission-led government. And people went, well, that's fair enough. He doesn't sound like a lunatic. He's not Jeremy Corbyn.
I think
and it turned out he's gone back on every single one of those things. And I think that sense of
I think he's actually as I think he's as volatile and as socialist. People will disagree with me, as Corbyn potentially. I think what I want to put to you, and I'm so glad we're all standing in support of farmers for the obvious reasons, but this isn't a criticism of you personally. I lay this firmly at your party's door. Such a debacle was made in the last few months by the Conservative Party that I think this box, I say every day, this box of tissues would have beaten Sunak because the British public had stopped listening. And I'm 60 years of age, and I said it earlier on in the show. I was there in 79 with green goddesses and rubbish on the street and every union wanting a pay rise. I knew what was going to happen. I'm amazed, though, Graham, that it's taken not short of 4 months and he has managed to alienate, on a serious note, some of the most important, the core of what makes the United Kingdom so brilliant in my mind. Pensioners who have put stuff in all their lives. Armed forces veterans now sleeping outside whilst we house migrants and early release prisoners in hotels. And now the farming community. People who... Another thing, private schools. Let's assume everybody's a millionaire. No, you total dork. Nobody is all... A lot of people like my parents struggled to pay because they wanted to make that choice. I think Starmer had no plan, and I lay this at the Tories' door because I don't think he needed a bloody plan. I think it's come home to roost. Do you not agree with that?
Well, I think you are a little unfair on us because, you know, we got through the pandemic, the energy crisis. We had 4 million more jobs than in 2010. Waiting lists were coming down, but we've seen it all over the world. Every practically every incumbent government has been thrown out by the electorate. So, you know, we have to put our hands up and accept an element here. But, you know, when it comes back to it, is Keir Starmer, now the farmer harmer, but I mean, he set out with a whole set of promises which sounded reasonable. They probably sounded reasonable to you. We're not going to put your tax up. We're not going to put your national insurance up. We're going to look after the elderly. And unlike, you know, sort of basket case socialists, we recognise the importance of economic growth. We've been wining and dining business. We're going to help business too. We're a balanced. You know, they put forward what is largely a kind of conservative manifesto. People wanted change because, you know, we've been through a tough time. I'd argue that we did a pretty good job on balance, except in our terms of our internal unity.
Yes,
and now they've got in, and you know, we have to own the loss. But you know, the truth was we grew the economy more than Germany, France, and Japan since 2010. We did. Put a lot more into the health service, education standards have raised. Now we've got a bunch of vitriolic socialists. First thing they do is try and say that you can't have clear pronouncements on schools. They undermine school standards. They undermine small business. They undermine farmers. They undermine pensioners. They undermine everybody, it seems. Yeah. In the society. And as you say, I mean, every Labour government's always ended with higher unemployment at the end than the beginning, but no Labour government in history has started out so badly, so quickly as this one.
I love.
And he's not even here to face us and talk to us and explain why
he's in Brazil. So we've got Starmageddon, two-tier Keir, and Graham Stuart said he's now called the farmer harmer, but you will know, Graham Stuart, won't you, that his father was a tool maker.
Yes,
Jeremy Clarkson was at this rally today and he was ambushed by Victoria Derbyshire from the BBC. That's the wrong thing. I was always brought up to believe that the BBC was an impartial broadcaster, my arse. Watch this.
So it's not about you, it's not about your farm and the fact that you bought a farm to avoid inheritance tax?
Classic BBC there, classic. Oh yeah, it's not the fact that I bought a farm to avoid inheritance tax. The fact.
You told the Sunday Times in 2021 that's why you bought it.
These people.
Sorry?
BBC. OK, let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
I wanted a shoot, OK? That's even worse to the BBC. I wanted a shoot, which comes with the benefit of not having to pay inheritance tax. Now I do.
I love the man. Graham, just to give you an idea, and you said something that many people have said to us today, this was a protest that was both peaceful and well-run and organised. There was anger, but so much of what we've seen in our society where we can protest has been appalling. That's another thing for me. Whilst I watch pictures of him in Brazil, I would be trying to talk to these people. And not just the farmers, the wider community do so much good. I want to bring into our conversation, Graham, if I can, Matt Cullen. Delighted, Matt, for you to be here. Beef farmer, fourth generation, based just outside Canterbury in Kent. Can you explain for people who perhaps don't understand? So they see this budget and they go, well, if a farmer's got £1 million farm, of course he should pay some tax. We're really struggling. Explain why the farming community and anybody with a brain cell realise that this is an absolutely outrageous policy.
It's an outrageous policy because it was brought in and we had agricultural property relief, was able to keep the food affordable for everyone. We are custodians of farmland, the countryside. We pass it on to the next generation. There's a lot of people that don't quite understand. Oh, well, you've got all these big assets. You can pay all this. Yes, we might have assets that are worth, but the actual cash flow and what we have in our bank from what we produce and sell is very minimum. And you will be very lucky to find many farmers that will be making mass profit. Most times they are making a loss because we are controlled by supermarkets that distribute what they want and charge what they want to consumers.
You talked about, and Graham, I'd love you to get involved as and when you are able and willing. You talked about custodians for the next generation. So presumably the Labour Party's idea is, if you've got a farm worth, $1 million, give us 200 grand and you've got 800 grand. What does that mean, though? From what you're saying, people will have to sell up, farms will be broken up. What's going to happen to the rural communities?
Well, what you're going to lose is you're going to lose those rural farms, those small family farms that are struggling because they cannot afford to pay the inheritance tax. And yes, they can say you can pay it over 9 to 10 years. That's fine. But if anything happens in between times, there are more costs put on. And that's the problem. And if they sell up and say, right, we can't afford the inheritance tax, we're going to sell the farm and pack up completely, they're done with a double whammy with capital gains tax on top. So we're being shafted from all directions from this government and what they want to achieve.
You were down there today, Graham was as well. Graham talked about a real sense of anger, calmness, yes, of course, dignity, that's what the farming community is, but also real anger on the streets.
There's a lot of anger, and this isn't just my generation, this is the next generation. This is like to my daughter, to lots of people's grandchildren. That's where it affects. And when the farmers have gone and packed up, they won't come back. This knowledge is not, you can't restart it. And the government haven't got a single clue about anything on agriculture.
Do you know what really touched me with what you just said? And I'd like to repeat this because I think people at home would want to respond to this. So if I'm coming from the other angle, I'm going, come on, mate, you've got a £1 million farm, I'm struggling, you're going to sell it, you're going to pay 200 grand tax, which you should do because you're rich, and then you've got 800 grand. But then you've got to pay capital gains tax on the remaining 800,000 of 40%. So you're probably going to lose 60 or 70% of something that's been passed down. Graham, it is appalling, isn't it? It is absolutely despicable, isn't it, as a policy?
It is. But if you take an area like mine, Beverley and Holderness, we'll be losing, if the government's right, it's 500 farms a year. Well, that's one out of my constituency or more every year. And that's 500 million being taken out of the economy. That farmers spend money with agricultural suppliers, every kind of suppliers around the community. And so it's just draining cash out of an area which already has lower than average earnings, people who get very low returns on capital employed. And what do these farms do? They produce the food upon which we rely. And we know they get very small margins on it, but they do it because they're able to pass it on and build it. And so one of the saddest things for me today was meeting a young guy, Sam, who's just trying to work out, is he going to follow his father? Should he? What's the future for the farm? If he goes in and dedicates his life to this very, very long hours, you can't opt in and opt out. When the rest of us feel a bit unwell, we can have the day off. Well, funnily enough, those cows, they don't wait. There's no one else to look after them. You go out regardless.
I really wanted to
hospitalised. You have to be in there and do it, and that's what they do, which is why they don't make much request of the NHS. And then when you hear it saying, oh well, these people with the broad shoulders will have to support the NHS. These guys are up at 4 in the morning looking after their cows, producing the food that feeds us. It's just, of all the people to target, there must be so many people you could target who are a bit undeserved.
Well, what you could do is something with the...
They're not the ones that you'd think of.
Well, somebody said earlier what you could do is look at the £13 billion foreign aid budget. I mean, what's this going to raise? I was told 565 million. Well, that's a 25th of the foreign aid budget. If you drop that by 4.6%, James Price was telling me, that's the same thing. Matt, can I ask you something? Graham makes a really good point, and you touched upon it. Try and explain to the viewers and listeners this, and it probably is going to come out wrong, but this generation to generation, have there not been moments when you've thought, this is too bloody hard, I might as well just sell up here? I'm sorry about, legacy, etc., but what is it instilled? How is it that the farming community in its entirety feels this way and has always been like that?
It's a way of life.
Yep.
And we've all been brought or bred into it, and we're hooked on it, and that's as much as I could say on that. But I do get at times, and I'm a very small farmer, that I look at it and go, I need to pull the plug and pack up now. And if I look back at my great-grandparents and what they did and achieve and what they went through, to now look at me and say, enough's enough, they'd be pretty ashamed about that. And all we want to do is produce reasonably priced food for everyone in this country. And what the government want to do would completely destroy that. And at the moment, we're over 50% self-sufficient. if they have their way and put out the farmers, that family farm goes out of business, their 20% that they say it's going to affect is absolute rubbish and lie. The figures at the moment that are coming through are more 70 to 80% family farms it's going to affect today. And when Jeremy Clarkson put a poll up asking people how many it was going to affect, their hands still were raised. There wasn't any hands that were dropped. So the government have got this completely wrong. And what will that mean when family farms go? It will mean we will be 100% low on imports, which is a dangerous, dangerous situation to be in. Right. And the cost of food will go. It will go right through the roof. And that's not what we're about. We're about producing low-cost food that's healthy, benefit, seasonable, and be able to feed the nation, not be put out of business for capital gains tax for land grabs, which has been made very clear by some of the MPs. They want to buy land, put solar farms on it. That's what they want to do.
Christ, here we go.
You know, and it's very obvious what is going to happen. What they were trying to do of getting the big farmers, the big corporate businesses to catch them, it's not going to affect them. They've got so many loopholes and things they get around. That's what's going to happen. It's going to affect the average day family farm that are not clued up, that are like myself, that aren't on the tech and all the loopholes, that we struggle and we do what we do because we are custodians of that land and we enjoy what we do and we think we have a census place in this country to produce food to the best quality we can and feed the nation. And yet this government want to take all that away and end up with big corporate farms with imported food and high food costs. And that's just wrong. You're amazing, Matt.
He speaks so honestly, doesn't he, Graham? And just from a political point of view, is there any... I mean, Clarkson, mate, I think Clarkson said something like, what was it he finished by saying? For the sake... He said, that's the thing. I want this government to accept this was rushed. It wasn't thought out, it was a mistake, and that's the big thing to do, to admit it and back down. There's no chance of him backing down, is there, Starmer? He hasn't backed down on the winter fuel cut. I think this guy doesn't say he's in bloody Brazil. What do you make of it, Graham? Because this is... I describe the pensioners' fuel tax as Starmer's poll tax. This is on the same level, isn't it? They'll never forgive him, the farming community.
No, they won't. But I mean, we've heard the passionate evidence from Matt just now. It is wrong. It will therefore be corrected. I mean, Kemi Badenoch today came out and said, in the event of a Conservative government coming back, which I firmly expect will be the case in 4.5 years' time, we will reverse this. No ifs, no buts, because it just doesn't make any sense. No. Why would you want to force off people like Matt from providing that food and also managing the environment? We haven't even touched on that. The nature work that is done by farmers, just as part of what they do, is quite remarkable. And here's a government which says it's utterly committed to improving the environment. What do they want to do? Close all the small farmers and give it over to massive industrial, foreign-owned, mass-scale farming, which doesn't give a damn and has no knowledge of the area. People like Matt and their families have been there for generations. They know every copse. They know the waterways inside out. But we will reverse it. I think, the political price that Labour are going to pay is going to be significant. They do now represent rural constituencies. And one of my defeated colleagues today banged into the person who took over from them, and they said, "Do you want your job back?" Because they were getting it in the neck.
Well, I tell you what, I would never...
Sorry, Jeremy, just to say, I'd say to Matt and others, don't give up. My experience, I've been an MP for 19 years. If somebody gets something wrong, they will dig in and they'll try and hold on. But, you just have to keep going, keep prodding and making sure that we make the case. And if we do that, they will wish they hadn't done this. And even I hope they'll reverse it. I think they might. If they don't, then they'll wish they had. And in any event, we will reverse it. And I want to say to young Sam, who I saw today, this isn't going to flip-flop. I don't think once we've shown what a mistake this is, it doesn't raise much money, it's not fair, it doesn't make any economic sense. Once we have reversed it, when there's a Labour government again in the hopefully far future, they will not return to this because they'll realise what an idiotic mistake it was. So I think, it is an aberration that might last a few years, and it will be damaging. It is wrong. It makes no economic sense, but it isn't going to be there for the long term. So I want Matt's kids, young Sam I met today, and the other people who've just taken over a farm to be optimistic about the future. They should be. They should be proud of what family farm do for this country in terms of the local community, in terms of feeding the nation, and in terms of looking after the environment. And only someone who was off their head or was never in the country would think it was a good idea to drive these people off the land and replace them with what, private equity firms or foreign-based investors. Who on earth wants that? You would struggle to find in the biggest inner city people putting their hands up and going, oh yeah, that's what we want. That's what we voted Labour for.
Shall I tell you, that is the most sense. What you said, I completely agree with. Matt, I would love to be able to do this longer, but as ever is timing. But to all that farming community, and we'll talk about it on this station, we always will, common sense is what talk is about, and there is no common sense in this policy, and it is yet again, as Graham Stuart correctly says, attacking a group, a community that is part of the lifeblood of this country, and we stand fully with you, mate, and I really appreciate you being on the show. Matt Cullen, a beef farmer, and Graham Stuart as well.